Dark rooftop, rain pouring. A rookie cop freezes as his own mentor points a gun at him. What if the hero you trusted turned out to be the monster? A hidden folder, forbidden videos, and a truth powerful enough to burn the whole city down. Flash. Crying child, homeless veteran, trembling hands holding a flash drive. This is more than corruption. It's love, sacrifice, and courage against silence. Subscribe now, because the truth is the only weapon we have. The city never really slept. Neon lights bled down onto cracked pavement, bouncing off puddles of rainwater mixed with oil. People hurried past, faces buried in their collars, pretending not to notice the shadows where the unwanted live, the forgotten, the broken, the one society called useless. Elliot Ramirez sat alone in the data room of the precinct, the hum of the computer filling the silence. The glow of the monitor lit his tired face, catching the sharp lines beneath his dark eyes. He'd only been on the force 3 months, still green, still learning what it meant to wear the uniform. But already the job weighed on him, heavier than the badge pinned to his chest. Some nights, he would catch himself staring at his reflection in the glass, wondering if he really belonged here. A kid from the barrio, son of a homeless vet, trying to build a life inside a system that had once chewed up and spit out his own father. People had laughed when Elliot said he wanted to be a cop. That world isn't built for kids like you, they'd told him. Maybe they were right, but Elliot had made a promise to himself, and to the memory of the man who raised him, that he wouldn't wear this uniform the way others did. He would protect, not destroy. He would be different. His father, Miguel Ramirez, had been a soldier once, a good one. But the war didn't give him anything back except a shattered arm and a German shepherd named Rex. Elliot grew up beneath bridges and overpasses, listening to his father's stories of battlefields and fire, of how Rex had pulled him out of the rubble when everything went dark. To Elliot, his father was a hero. But the world only saw a dirty vagrant and an old dog. They spat at him, laughed, called him trash. Elliot was 10 years old when he learned what contempt looked like in a stranger's eyes. By 17, he'd buried his father and the old dog within months of each other. He remembered the night he dug into the mud by the riverbank, rain soaking him to the bone, while he laid Rex to rest. It felt like the last piece of his childhood had been stripped away. Standing in the downpour, Elliot had whispered a vow. I'll wear the uniform one day, but I'll never be like them. 3 months into his career, the precinct treated him like every rookie before him. He was the kid they sent for coffee, the one who always stayed late with the files. Some sneered, some ignored him. But there was one exception, Maya Lee. Maya was sharp, relentless, and carried herself with a kind of fire Elliot couldn't look away from. She knew what it was to be underestimated. As one of the few women of color on the force, she'd heard every whisper, every patronizing comment. But she never bowed her head. Maybe that was why she and Elliot became close so quickly. On nights when their shifts ended late, they'd share cheap noodles from a corner shop, sitting on the cold steps. Outside, steam curling into the night air. Maya would talk, her voice fierce with conviction about the injustices she wanted to fight, while Elliot mostly listened, drinking in her words and the warmth of her presence. He'd never dared name the feeling that stirred inside him. But it was there, quietly burning. That night in the data room, Elliot's eyes caught on a strange folder buried deep in the system. Hidden _47. It was locked, no label, no attached report. Just a padlock icon waiting to be ignored. Something inside him tightened. He knew he should leave it alone. A rookie had no business prying into things that didn't concern him. But Elliot couldn't forget the memories that lived in his bones. The image of his father being shoved aside by men wearing the same badge he wore. Now. What if this folder held more of those stories? What if it was proof that his father's pain hadn't been an isolated cruelty, but part of something bigger, something deliberately hidden? The decision was made before Elliot even realized it. He began working nights, quietly, patiently, learning how to slip past the lock. During the day, he carried on as usual, smiling stiffly when Carter clapped him on the back. Carter, his superior, his supposed mentor, the man the whole department admired. A hero, they called him. To Elliot, Carter had once been larger than life. He was the one who'd looked Elliot in the eye on his first day and said, "You've got the makings of a real cop." But there was something in Carter's eyes, something cold, that never let Elliot fully relax. A week later, in the dead of night, the lock clicked open. Elliot leaned forward, heart pounding, as the first video loaded. The footage jolted and shook. The raw perspective of a body camera. A homeless man cowered against a wall, arms raised. Uniformed officers crowded around him, jeering, shoving, boots slamming into his ribs. "You're nothing. You're a stain." Elliot's stomach twisted. He could see his father in that man's face. Another video. A young black woman dragged from her car, screaming for her child strapped in the back seat. An officer leveled a gun at her chest. "Move again, and I'll drop you right here." The child's cries filled the audio, piercing. Elliot's hands shook as he clicked through file after file. A one-armed veteran trembling beneath the streetlight, while his old K9 barked hoarsely at armed officers who only laughed. A boy of 12 beaten to the ground for daring to spray paint a wall. And then Carter. There was no mistaking his face. The man Elliot had admired, the one everyone respected, standing over that boy with fury etched across his features. The crack of a baton, the boy's scream. Carter's voice low and venomous. Lesson learned. Elliot slammed the laptop shut, breath ragged, his chest burning. He could feel the floor tilt beneath him. Everything he believed about the badge, about justice, about the man who'd welcomed him into the brotherhood, it all splintered in a single moment. The next day, he found Maya. They sat in a corner cafe, the kind that smelled of burnt coffee and fried food. Elliot leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw something last night. Videos. Things we were never supposed to see. They're hiding them, Maya. And Carter was in them." Her chopsticks clattered against the table. She stared at him like he'd just told her the sky was falling. "Elliot, do you understand what you're saying? If this is true, if you're right, you're not just risking your badge. You're risking your life." Elliot dropped his gaze to his hands. They were trembling. "I can't ignore it. If my dad were here, he'd tell me to do the right thing." Maya was silent for a long time. Then, softly, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "Then you won't do it alone." Outside, rain began to fall, streaking down the window beside them. They sat in silence, the weight of the storm pressing down, knowing that whatever waited in the shadows of Folder 47 was only the beginning. Rain hammered the sidewalks that night, pooling in the gutters, washing cigarette butts and scraps of paper into the drains. Elliot couldn't sleep. He lay on his narrow bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, his mind replaying the footage over and over. The homeless man's cries, the child's scream, Carter's face. He wanted to believe there was some explanation. Some way those videos could be out of context, distorted, anything but the truth staring him down. But deep inside, Elliot knew. He had seen enough growing up to recognize cruelty when it wore a badge. By dawn, his decision was made. He would copy the files. He would make sure they weren't buried again. At the precinct, he tried to act normal. But Carter's presence suddenly felt suffocating. The man walked through the halls like he owned them, handshakes and backslaps, laughter booming. To everyone else, he was the hero who'd kept the streets safe. To Elliot, he was the man. In the video, his baton raised over a boy's head. That morning, Carter caught Elliot's eye across the bullpen and smiled. Something about it, too sharp, too knowing, sent a chill crawling down Elliot's spine. Later, Maya found him in the file room, her arms crossed, her hair still damp from the rain. "You look like hell," she said. "I feel like it. You still want to do this?" Elliot nodded. "If we don't, no one will." She didn't argue. Instead, she pulled a small flash drive from her pocket and set it on the desk. "We're going to need insurance." That night, when the building had emptied, Elliot slipped back into the data room. Maya kept watch by the door, her foot tapping anxiously against the tile. Elliot's fingers flew across the keyboard, dragging files, copying, watching the progress bar inch forward like a heartbeat. Halfway through, the door handle rattled. Elliot froze. Maya's hand darted to her sidearm. But then came Carter's voice, muffled through the door. "Ramirez, you in there?" Elliot's blood ran cold. He yanked the flash drive free, shoved it into his pocket, and tried to steady his breathing. When he opened the door, Carter stood in the hall, arms folded, eyes narrowing. "Working late, rookie?" Carter asked. "Yes, sir," Elliot forced a smile. "Just clearing up backlog." Carter's gaze lingered too long, sharp as a blade. Then, with a slow nod, he walked away. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, each one pounding in Elliot's chest. When the sound faded, Maya let out the breath she'd been holding. "He knows." Elliot swallowed hard. "Then we'd better move fast." They left the precinct together, rain still spitting from the sky, the city humming with restless energy. Every passing siren felt like it was meant for them. Elliot kept a hand over the flash drive in his pocket, like it was the only thing tethering him to sanity. Maya spoke first. "If we go public right away, they'll bury us. Say the videos are doctored, discredit us, maybe worse. We need a plan." Elliot looked at her, rain streaking down his face. "What do you suggest?" "Someone outside the system. Press, community leaders, anyone who can't be bought." Her words made sense, but Elliot hesitated. Exposing folder 47 meant war, not just with Carter, but with the institution that had built men like him into heroes. Still, as he glanced at Maya, her face fierce beneath the streetlight, he realized there was no turning back. Not anymore. Behind them, in the shadows of the precinct, a figure watched from the window. Carter's jaw tightened as he saw the two rookies disappear into the night together. "Damn kids don't know what they've stepped into," he muttered. Then his smile curved cold, deliberate. He wasn't going to let them walk away. The city felt different after that night. Every corner seemed to carry eyes, every shadow whispered danger. Elliot had always thought of himself as invisible in the precinct, a rookie, too small to matter, but now he felt like a spotlight had been fixed. On his back, he carried folder 47 in his pocket, or rather, the flash drive that held it. It was small, unremarkable, just a piece of plastic and metal. But it throbbed with weight, as if every scream, every blow captured in those videos, pulsed inside it. Maya stayed close. They walked side by side down the rain-slick streets, not speaking, only listening to the rush of cars, the hiss of tires on wet pavement. There was comfort in her presence, though Elliot's chest ached with the thought that his decision had dragged her into this mess. When they reached her apartment, a cramped second-floor walk-up with peeling paint on the stair rails, she gestured for him to come inside. He hesitated, then followed. The warmth of the room hit him, first faint smell of jasmine tea, a lamp glowing in the corner, stacks of law books and half-finished case files scattered across her desk. She tossed her wet jacket aside, shaking out her hair. "You should stay here tonight," she said softly. "If Carter's watching, you shouldn't go home." Elliot nodded, though unease still pulled at him. He sank onto her couch, his hands clasped together tightly. Maya made tea, the sound of the kettle filling the silence. When she set the mug in front of him, her hand brushed his. A spark, sharp and undeniable, leapt through him. He met her eyes, and for a moment neither of them looked away. "Elliot," she whispered, "you don't have to carry this alone. Whatever happens, I'm with you." Her words cut through the fog of fear. He wanted to say something back, something about how much she meant to him, how her presence was the only steady thing in this storm. But all that came out was a hoarse, "Thank you." The following days were a blur of routine laced with dread. They showed up to work, filed reports, exchanged meaningless small talk with colleagues. All the while, Elliot felt Carter's gaze like a brand against his skin. One afternoon, Carter cornered him in the locker room. The place was empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. "Ramirez," Carter said casually, leaning against the row of lockers. "You've been burning the midnight oil, haven't you?" Elliot forced a shrug. "Just trying to catch up." Carter's smile was thin, predatory. "Good man. Ambition's rare these days. But let me give you some advice. Curiosity in the wrong places can get you hurt. You understand?" Elliot's throat tightened. He nodded quickly, muttered something about paperwork, and escaped before his knees betrayed him. He found Maya in the parking lot, waiting by her car. "He cornered me," Elliot said, voice trembling. Maya clenched her jaw. "We're running out of time." That night, they reached out to a journalist Maya trusted, an older woman named Lena Ortiz, who'd spent her career exposing corruption. She agreed to meet in a diner on the outskirts of the city. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease, neon sign flickering in the window. Lena sat in a booth by the back, her notebook open. She looked tired, her gray hair pulled into a bun, but her eyes sharpened when Elliot slid the flash drive across the table. "Do you have any idea what you're handing me?" she asked. "Yes," Elliot said, steady now. "It's the truth." Lena studied him, then nodded slowly. "If this is real, it's not just Carter. This could blow the lid off the whole department. Maybe higher." Her words should have brought relief. Instead, Elliot felt a cold dread coil in his stomach. He wasn't naive. He knew how power worked. Truth didn't always set people free. It often crushed the ones who dared to speak it. Still, as he glanced at Maya, sitting beside him with her hand resting close enough to touch, he found resolve. He couldn't back down. They left the diner. Past midnight. The streets were nearly empty, the sky heavy with clouds. Elliot walked Maya to her car, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Do you think we'll make it out of this?" he asked quietly. Maya's eyes softened. "I think we don't have a choice but to try." For the first time in days, he smiled. And then, before doubt could creep in, he leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't careful, wasn't calculated. It was desperate, born of fear and longing, of knowing tomorrow might not come. She kissed him back, her hands gripping the collar of his jacket, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, breathless, she rested her forehead against his. "Whatever happens, we're in this together." 2 days later, the hammer fell. Elliot arrived at the precinct to find whispers buzzing through the bullpen. Eyes darted toward him, conversations hushed when he passed. He sat at his desk, confusion gnawing, until Carter strode in. In his hand, Carter held the flash drive. Elliot's blood turned to ice. "Lose something, rookie?" Carter drawled, twirling the drive between his fingers. The room seemed to tilt. Maya wasn't there. She'd called in late, caught in traffic. Elliot sat frozen as Carter stepped closer, his smile never touching his eyes. "You think you're clever, poking around where you don't belong? You think people like you can change this system?" Carter leaned in, voice low enough only Elliot could hear. "You don't even belong here, Ramirez. You're nothing but a charity case with a badge." Elliot's hands curled into fists. He forced himself not to react, not to give Carter the satisfaction. But inside, he was unraveling. When Maya finally arrived, she found Elliot outside, pacing in the parking lot, his face pale. "He has it," Elliot said, his voice breaking. "The drive, he knows." Maya grabbed his arm. "Then we're not done yet. We still have Lena. We still have the truth." But Elliot shook his head. "He'll bury us before we get there." "He'll bury you, Maya." She stepped closer, cupping his face in her hands. Look at me. I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of what happens if we do nothing. Her words cut through the haze of fear. Elliot pulled her into his arms, holding on as if she might vanish. In that moment, under the harsh glare of the parking lot lights, surrounded by the weight of everything closing in, he knew two things with absolute clarity. Carter wouldn't stop until they were silenced. And he would burn the whole system down before he let Maya fall. The next 48 hours blurred into something that felt more like survival than living. Elliot barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Carter's face leaning in close, whispering venom into his ear, promising ruin. The flash drive Carter had waved in his hand was only one copy. This second, Lena still had the original, tucked away somewhere. He didn't know, but that didn't matter. The fact that Carter had something was enough. It meant Carter knew. It meant the clock was ticking. Maya's apartment had become their refuge, though even there Elliot felt eyes watching from the street. She taped over her windows at night, unplugged her phone, stopped answering the door. Their world shrank to four walls, a pot of tea always cooling on the counter, whispered plans sketched in the dim light. One evening, while thunder rolled over the city, Maya spread maps and notes across her kitchen table. If Lena publishes, Carter will come straight for her, she said, tapping the paper. We need to buy her time. How? Elliot's voice cracked. He's got half the department in his pocket. He can make us disappear before anyone notices. Maya's eyes flashed. Then we go where he doesn't control the narrative. Community centers, churches, shelters. Places that remember what it's like to be invisible. People listen when pain looks like theirs. Elliot thought of his father, then Miguel under the bridge. Rex curled at his side. Nobody had listened to him. Nobody but a boy who had loved him enough to remember. That night, Elliot and Maya visited a shelter where Elliot's father used to sleep. The room smelled of damp clothes and coffee. Dozens of men and women lined the cots, weary eyes turning as the two officers stepped in. Suspicion was thick in the air. Elliot cleared his throat, nerves crawling up his spine. My name's Elliot Ramirez. My father used to stay here. Maybe some of you knew him, Miguel, and his dog Rex. A murmur spread. A man at the back, missing two fingers, nodded slowly. Yeah, the soldier. Always shared his blanket, even when he was freezing. Elliot swallowed hard. He died believing the system had forgotten him, and maybe it had. But I'm here to tell you, we have proof now. Proof of what they've done to people like him. To people like you. And I swear to God, we won't let it be buried. The room grew still. Some faces hardened, others softened. A woman whispered. About time someone said it. Later, outside in the rain, Maya touched Elliot's arm. You were your father's voice tonight. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of pride instead of dread, but Carter wasn't sleeping either. He launched investigations into Elliot's records, sent men to trail Maya, even staged an anonymous tip that led to a search of her apartment. Nothing was found, but the message was clear. I can reach you anywhere. One night, they returned to find her door cracked open. Inside, nothing was stolen, but her photographs, family, childhood, old academy days, were scattered across the floor. Torn in half, Maya's hands trembled as she picked up the pieces. Elliot gathered them silently, his jaw tight. He's trying to break us, she said. He won't. Elliot's voice was raw. He can take everything else, but not us. It was the first time he had said us out loud. Maya met his eyes, rain still dripping from her hair. Then hold me to it, she whispered. He kissed her there in the wreckage of her apartment, surrounded by shards of her life. It wasn't tender, it was fierce. A promise forged under fire. Days later, Lena called. Her voice was urgent. They're coming for me. Unmarked car parked outside my house all night. I need you two to move, now. Maya and Elliot drove across the city, headlights cutting through fog. But when they reached Lena's street, flashing red and blue lights already painted the houses. Officers swarmed her yard. Elliot's heart sank. They weren't here to protect her. They were here to silence her. From the shadows, Elliot spotted a figure at the edge of the chaos, an old German shepherd, ribs showing through his coat, sitting obediently beside a homeless man holding a sign that read, "I serve too." For a second, Elliot couldn't breathe. It was like seeing his father again. The man lifted his chin, eyes catching Elliot's, and nodded once, as if to say, "Keep going." Maya tugged his sleeve. "We can't stay. If Carter sees us," Elliot forced himself to move, to turn away. But that moment seared into him like a brand. It wasn't just about him and Maya anymore. It was about all of them, the forgotten, the voiceless, the children and veterans and stray dogs who carried the weight of being invisible. And if Carter wanted war, Elliot was ready to give it to him. They didn't go back to the precinct. They didn't go back to Maya's apartment either. By morning, both would be crawling with Carter's men who didn't ask questions when orders came from their hero. Instead, Elliot drove aimlessly through the sleeping city until dawn broke pale and gray. Maya sat beside him, silent. One hand curled into a fist on her lap. Neither of them had slept, their eyes bloodshot, their nerves frayed. Finally, they pulled into a deserted parking lot behind an abandoned church. Elliot cut the engine. The silence was suffocating. "We can't keep running in circles," Maya said. Her voice was low, but firm. "He'll hunt us until we have nothing left." Elliot leaned back against the seat, staring at the cracked windshield. "Then what do we do?" "Every door we knock on, he's already there. The department's his army. The city looks at him and sees a savior. No one's going to believe us." Maya turned to him, her eyes burning. "Not if we whisper. But if we scream loud enough, if we flood the streets with this, someone will have to listen." She reached into her jacket, pulling out a second flash drive. Elliot blinked. You made another copy?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "What did you think? That I'd put all our lives on one piece of plastic?" For the first time in days, Elliot laughed. A raw, exhausted sound, but real. "God, Maya, you're smarter than me. Someone has to be." She softened then, leaning closer. "But I can't do this without you." Elliot met her halfway. Their lips touched, slow this time, not desperate, but certain. In the quiet of the abandoned lot, surrounded by peeling paint and rusting fences, they gave each other something Carter could never touch. A reason to keep going. By noon, they had a plan. Lena might be silenced, but the footage could still speak. They would leak it everywhere online, across communities, to churches, shelters, schools. Not one voice, but thousands, each carrying the same truth. But Carter was already moving. Reports flashed on the news. 2 rogue officers suspected of data theft. Photos of Elliot and Maya filled the screen, branded as traitors. Their phones lit up with anonymous threats. Cars tailed them at intersections. One night, while hiding in a cheap motel on the edge of the city, the pounding came. Not at the door, but on the wall outside. Heavy boots. Voices muffled but sharp. Maya's eyes widened. "They found us." Elliot grabbed her hand. "Fire escape." They climbed out into the rain, the metal ladder slick under their palms. Behind them, the door. Splintered, voices shouting. They hit the alley, running blind through sheets of water, their lungs burning. A siren wailed somewhere too close. Tires screeched. A spotlight cut the dark. Elliot pulled Maya into a narrow gap between 2 dumpsters, pressing her against him. Both of them panting, hearts slamming in sync. The beam of light passed. The voices faded. For now, Maya's forehead rested against his chest, her breath hot against the soaked fabric of his shirt. "We can't keep outrunning him." "I know," Elliot whispered. His arms tightened around her. "But I swear, Maya, I won't let him take you." They found refuge where the system never looked among the very people Carter had tried to erase. An old veteran named Harris gave them a cot in the basement of a shelter, his one good arm. Shaking as he passed Elliot a blanket. "I knew your father," Harris said, eyes cloudy but kind. "Miguel Ramirez. He used to sit right where you're standing. Told me once that his boy would grow up to fight for us." Guess he wasn't wrong. Elliot swallowed hard, his throat thick. Maya squeezed his hand under the table. That night, lying on the thin mattress, Elliot whispered into the dark, "I feel like he's still here. Like he's watching." Maya turned toward him, her face faint in the streetlight seeping through the window. "Then let's make him proud." She leaned in, brushing her lips over his, slow and steady, before curling against him. In the shelters, silence, amid the coughs and snores of men who had lost everything, they found something neither had expected. Love blooming in the cracks of despair. But Carter's net was tightening. A week later, the shelter was raided. Officers in tactical gear stormed the halls, forcing the homeless into the streets, barking orders. Elliot and Maya slipped out the back, hearts pounding, as Harris blocked the doorway with his body. "You won't find them here," Harris barked. Voice hoarse. "And if you try, you'll have to go through me." The officers shoved him aside, but by the time they searched, Elliot and Maya were gone. They ran until their legs gave out, collapsing in an empty lot. Maya's face was pale, streaked with dirt and sweat. Elliot brushed a strand of wet hair from her cheek. "He'll destroy everyone who helps us," Elliot said bitterly. "Then we make it worth the cost," Maya replied. Her voice trembled, but her eyes did not. The final push came 2 nights later. They stood on a rooftop, laptop balanced on a milk crate, the city sprawling below them. Maya's fingers flew over the keys, uploading folder 47 to every corner of the internet forums, social media, encrypted networks. Elliot stood watch, scanning the streets below. And then he saw them, black SUV's doors slamming. Carter stepping out, his face lit by streetlights, eyes locked on the building. "They're here," Elliot hissed. Maya didn't stop typing, almost done. Carter's voice echoed through a megaphone. "Ramirez, Lee. Come down now, and maybe you walk away breathing." Elliot felt Maya's hand find his. She didn't look up from the screen, but her grip was iron. The progress bar hit 100%. The files were gone, everywhere, untouchable now. Maya closed the laptop, meeting his eyes. "It's done." Carter's men were already storming the stairwell. Elliot pulled her into his arms, kissing her with everything he had left. "Whatever happens now, we did it." The door burst open. Boots thundered closer. But for that moment, in the heart of the storm, Elliot and Maya stood together, unbroken. The stairwell shook with the thunder of boots. The rooftop air was thick with rain and electricity, the storm rolling over the city as if the sky itself were watching. Elliot tightened his grip on Maya's hand, his body braced between her and the door. Carter was the first to appear, his silhouette filling the doorway, flanked by officers in black gear. His eyes locked onto Elliot, a smile cutting sharp across his face. "You really thought you could outplay me, rookie?" His voice carried easily over the rain. "You think a couple of kids can topple an empire?" Elliot's chest heaved. "We don't need to topple it. We just needed the truth out." Carter's smile faltered for the first time. "You leaked it." "All of it," Maya said, stepping forward, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "Every face, every scream, every crime. The world has it now." Carter's eyes darkened. He gestured, and his men moved closer, rifles raised. "Then, you won't live to see the fallout." Elliot pulled Maya behind him. His mind raced. He had no weapon but his body, no shield but his resolve. Still, he felt something anchor him, his father's voice, Rex's bark, the weight of every forgotten soul whose pain lived in folder 47. "You can kill us," Elliot said, his voice raw, "but you can't kill what's already free." For a moment, silence hung, rain lashed against steel. The men hesitated, doubt flickering in their eyes. They'd seen the footage too, or at least heard the whispers. Carter barked an order, but his command didn't carry the same iron it. Once did. Maya stepped up beside Elliot, her hand sliding into his. Her voice rang out, clear and unshaken. "We're not afraid of you anymore." Something cracked then, not in the sky, but in the grip Carter held over his men. One officer lowered his rifle, then another. The chain began to break. Carter's face twisted with rage. He lunged forward, pulling his own gun, the barrel aimed straight at Elliot. Time seemed to slow. Elliot shoved Maya back, bracing for the flash, and then a sound split the storm. A dog's bark, deep and guttural, from the shadows of the rooftop. An old German shepherd leapt, teeth sinking into Carter's arm. The gun clattered to the wet concrete. Carter roared, trying to shake the animal off. Elliot froze. It wasn't Rex, couldn't be, but for one surreal second, it felt like his father's dog had returned. Summoned by everything they had fought for, the officers rushed, pulling Carter back. The shepherd growled, standing firm between Elliot, Maya, and the man who had hunted them. Carter's voice broke into a snarl. "You think this changes anything? They'll bury it. They always bury it." But no one moved to follow his orders. Not this time. Elliot stepped forward, rain streaking down his face. No, not anymore. By dawn, the rooftop was empty except for Elliot, Maya, and the shepherd that had vanished into the streets as quickly as it appeared. Carter had been dragged away, cursing, his empire crumbling in real time as news feeds exploded with the footage. On the sidewalks below, people gathered, their voices rising, not in whispers but in chants. Names of the victims echoed against the glass towers. Justice, fragile but real, had cracked through the surface. Maya leaned against Elliot, exhausted but unbroken. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. As the city awakened to the truth, "You kept your promise," she whispered. Elliot pressed his lips to her hair. "No, we did." And as the sun fought through the clouds, he felt it, the weight lift, the silence shatter, the beginning of something his father had always dreamed of. For the first time in his life, Elliot Ramirez believed. 3 years later, the city had changed. Not all at once, not cleanly systems built on rot, never crumble in a single night. But cracks had spread, and through those cracks, light pushed in. Folder 47 had become more than a scandal. It became a symbol. On murals across brick walls, in graffiti under bridges, in whispered prayers in shelters, people spoke of it. They spoke of the ones who had been silenced and the 2 officers who refused to stay quiet. Elliot Ramirez no longer wore a badge. After Carter's fall, the department had offered him a chance to stay, to be a poster boy for reform. He refused. The badge to him was a weight he couldn't bear anymore. Instead, he and Maya started something different, a foundation for veterans, for the homeless, for families left broken by the same system that had nearly broken them. Shelter Harris once guarded became their headquarters. Elliot still remembered his father every time he walked its halls, every time an old dog limped in with a scarred soldier, every time a child found safety for the first time. Maya stood his side through it all. Their love had deepened not in the absence of struggle, but inside it. They carried scars, nights of running, faces of the lost, the echo of Carter's voice in their bones. But together, those scars became maps of survival. One evening, Elliot sat on the steps outside the shelter, the city humming around him. Maya joined him, leaning her head on his shoulder. In the distance, a boy tossed a ball for a German shepherd, its bark ringing strong against the dusk. Elliot closed his eyes, and for a moment, he swore he heard Rex's bark too. Maya's hand found his. "What are you thinking about?" "My dad," Elliot murmured, "and how proud he'd be. Not of me, of us. Of you. Maya smiled, her eyes catching the last light of sunset. And let's keep giving him reasons. Above them, the city lights flickered on. Not perfect, not pure, but alive proof that even in a world built on silence, love and truth could still carve a place to belong. And somewhere in the shadows, perhaps only in memory, a loyal dog kept watch, tail thumping against the pavement. Guarding them still, soft music rises. The city skyline glows at dawn, people gather in the streets, and a mural of a veteran and his dog stretches across a brick wall. Elliot and Maya walk through a shelter, their hands entwined, children laughing. Around them, in the end, it was never just about a hidden folder or a corrupt man. It was about the silenced finally being heard, about love surviving fear, and about courage that refused to fade. The screen fades to Elliot standing in the rain, looking upward as if searching for his father's voice in the storm. Slowly, the image dissolves into black dot. If this story touched you, subscribe and stay with us. Together, we can keep these voices alive. Sometimes, simply listening is the most powerful act of all.